Hey physics. So this is the Google form that goes with activity 1 from investigation 3 about the continuous versus the particle model of matter. This was a pretty short activity in the Concord, but it is a hefty theoretical thing to think about. So the gist here is that we're doing a thought experiment, thinking about things like we would if we were a scientist from the Middle Ages, like 1,000 years ago or so, who didn't have the culture of knowledge built up that you guys have. You know about molecules, you know about atoms. You may not know specifically a whole lot about it, but you certainly have heard of them and you have an idea. This idea, before microscopes were invented, was thinking about and debating this issue of if you cut something in half an infinite amount of times or a certain number of times, is it always going to stay that same thing? Is it like a continuous model of matter where it's you cut paper into a million pieces and it's always paper? Or at some point when you cut these things down, do they become something different? Do they become like the parts or the building blocks of things? And that's the particle model of matter, where when you cut it enough times, eventually you're going to have different things, right? Like different building blocks that you put together to make different things. So as time has gone by and people have been able to do more experiments and ask better questions and try new things and see new things and talk to each other, we've discovered that the particle model of matter is actually what happens. You guys know about atoms, which are the parts, the tiniest parts you can break things into. You can break atoms smaller too, but atoms are kind of where they're like the building blocks, the foundations, the elements, right, that you combine together to make everything in the universe as far as we know, right? Okay, so let's look at this Google form and see how we're going to answer these questions. So in this activity, we're analyzing different hypotheses about what matter is made out of. Why is it important to explore multiple answers to a question? Why is it useful to think about the continuous versus the particle model of matter? Why don't we just learn it like the one thing that it already is? So with this one, I want you to read closely here, and I want you to really think about this. And also notice that this is a not pick one, but this is like you can pick multiple ones. So you want to consider each and every one of these and whether you are going to select it. The truth is that all of these are correct. You might learn something new. You're going to find out if they're correct. You're going to find out if it's incorrect. You're going to find out what more you need to know, and you're going to refine your question. This is a hefty amount of points in this one, so I want you to make sure that you do select each one of those because they're all important. So if a piece of paper is cut into smaller and smaller pieces, would the smallest pieces be paper? If a person says, yes, paper is always paper no matter how small the piece is, which model do they agree with? Paper is always paper no matter how small the piece is. That's the continuous model. That means that no matter how small you get, you're still looking at paper, okay? Oops. Okay, so one student says, I know that paper is made from wood. So if you cut the paper small enough, you will eventually get wood and water particles and tiny bits of other things that paper is made from. Those are the things that can't be broken down any further. So basically this person is saying that you break down paper enough and you get paper's parts, which are wood, water. You know, they may not look like wood or water like we know it at the macro scale anymore, but that's what that is. So that is actually the particle model of matter. If you break it apart enough times and it changes into something different, then that's particle model of matter. So another student says, this is a tricky one, a lot of people got this one wrong. The tiny pieces of paper will eventually turn into something we would call paper dust, but that is still just tiny pieces of paper. So which models does this student agree with? This is a tricky one. Like I said, if we're calling it paper dust, but it's just still paper, just like really tiny pieces of it, that is the continuous model of matter. That means that it's that's continuous. It's always the same thing no matter how small. Okay, so then which hypothesis do you agree with? Complete the following sentence. I agree with the something model of matter because, and please do start with that. It really helps me to, and I think it helps you to structure your thoughts if you use the sentence starters that I provide there. And now that we are at the end of this week and I've explained this to you really clearly, I hope that you agree with the particle model of matter, having seen what you've seen, having witnessed the evidence that you've seen this week. So you can actually have a really good, complex answer to this one that's going to work well on the test for you. I agree with the particle model of matter because, and why?